good, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. So we're gonna be breaking down this fight night. Namajunas taking on Amanda Ribas. Kind of a little bit of a downer in terms of main events. I'm not gonna lie, the last couple have been, and the next one is pretty mid too. But the fight night's not too terrible in terms of like the actual fights on the card. I'm not gonna lie, I'm feeling pretty under the weather. I'm feeling really slow today, so this video is probably going to be a little bit different than the norm. I think I'm not going to be going too in-depth. I'm just going to really be telling you who I think is going to win and probably how, and then we're just going to move forward. Feeling a little better now. Let's get into the first fight of the night. Usman taking on Mick Parkin. Mick Parkin looked honestly horrendous in his last bout, and I picked him. I've picked him in his last couple of fights, because technically he does just seem a little bit ahead of the curve for a lot of the heavyweights outside of the rankings. But in terms of his cardio, in terms of his power behind his shots, in terms of his fight IQ sometimes, absolutely horrendous. And Usman, I'm going to be just straight, he's not much better in that aspect. His fight IQ does seem a little bit higher, and he's not just some massive, sloppy, fat heavyweight, which I feel like Mick Parkin is in ways. Again, not trying to hate, I'm just trying to tell you how I see it. I think if Mick Parkin gets taken down, he's going to have maybe one get up, maybe two get ups in his gas tank. But if Mo can just keep chasing that wrestling, keep holding him up against the cage like he does with everybody, I think eventually he's just going to win a really boring, unanimous decision. So I'm going to side with Usman, getting it done. Moving on up the card, we got Igor Severino taking on Lima. We got two undefeated prospects coming out of Brazil, and this is going to be taking place at flyweight. I'm going to be going with Lima. He looks a little bit more filled into the weight class. Igor Severino, he looks skinny, to be completely honest with you. He looks talented. Honestly, a lot of people at flyweight look talented on the regional circuit. It's hard to really tell how it's going to translate into the UFC. I think that is going to be a little bit more adjusted. It's hard to, you know, again, you don't really know going into it. Things can really drastically change in the UFC. I'm going to side with Lima just because I feel like he's a little bit more built for the weight class. Like, it's that simple on this card, I guess. And then we have Montserrat Rendon taking on Dariya Zheleznykova. Oh boy. I'm going to be going with Dariya Zheleznykova, getting it done. I feel like she's already, for one, beaten somebody that was undefeated at 9-0, and Montserrat Rendon is at 6-0. And that person that she defeated was also a grappler who was tossing her around left and right. I think Montserrat is going to be able to do that for the most part, but I don't think she's going to have much finishing potential when she gets her there. And I don't think that she's going to be able to completely wet blanket her and just hold her there for good. I think Dariya is going to be able to get back to her feet and make it look not very competitive in the stand-up. And I think overall her gas tank is going to be better. So I'm going to trust her to get a unanimous decision win. Don't be surprised if it's the opposite. I'm notoriously bad at picking the female fights. It's just, sometimes it's such a coin flip. This is one of those fights, and I'm going to be flipping the coin. Tails going with Dariya. Moving on up the card, we got Nguyen taking on Jarno Errens. Look, I hate how Jarno Errens looks. No, I'm playing. That's toxic. Jarno Errens isn't that bad. But for a featherweight in the UFC, I'm trying to remember where I watched him fight last. I just remember feeling like I walked away from it. Yeah, Sung Woo Choi, and he lost a unanimous decision. I liked how he looked in the third round, actually. I think it was that round where he was starting to pick up steam. But other than that, it just looked like he wasn't able to put his foot on the gas and figure out what he was doing in the third round sooner. I don't trust him to be able to do that in this fight either. I think Nguyen is going to be able to keep a pretty good pace on Jarno Errens. I think he's going to be able to tank any of the heavy shots that Jarno's throwing. I think Jarno's footwork might be able to throw off Steven, but I don't know if he's going to be able to find the right shots to, you know, put him out. And I don't think in the grappling, Jarno's going to be able to submit Nguyen unless he just catches him, you know, randomly in some odd position and then finds his way to the back or just something like that. You know, you have to account for too much weird shit going on to want to pick Jarno Errens, I feel like. So I'm going to be trusting Nguyen. Get this one done. He just has the safer style, honestly. Next up, honestly, probably one of my favorite fights on the whole card, Miles Johns taking on Cody Gibson. To me, Miles Johns is like our new age version of John Lineker. And I know John Lineker still fights over and one, so don't get me wrong, like I still follow his career. But Miles Johns is young, he's in the UFC, and he has that type of style. Like the same frame, Danier, iron hands, a good chin, but I would say that Miles Johns is breakable, which is the one thing that's a little bit different from, I don't know if breakable is the right word, actually. No, I think that's a good word for it. The thing that worries me about this fight is Cody Gibson is a seasoned vet. He's getting a second shot in the UFC, so you know he's going to have a different type of fire lit under his ass. Especially because he just lost the fight that, you know, got him the shot. But because it was such a dogfight, you know, they're still letting him try again. 9 losses shows that, you know, somebody like Miles Johns could easily figure you out if 9 other people could. The thing is, Cody Gibson has the reach, the cardio, and that dog in him, which is, it's hard to bet against all 3 of those things, which I'm still going to be doing it because I'm a risky man, and I think Miles Johns really could be something, at least make it to the top 15 at bantamweight if he really just starts to figure out how to work his game plan. I don't know, you know, sometimes I really just will make excuses for fighters that I really like, and I like him because he reminds me so much of John Lineker. John Lineker is one of my all-time favorites, especially as a bantamweight. So I'm going to be trusting Miles Johns to find that knockout shot on a weathered Cody Gibson, even though, honestly, nothing really points to it. Like, if you want to be smart about it, you can still pick Miles Johns, but maybe, like, by a decision because Cody Gibson's tough. But if you want to be risky like me, fuck it, we go on Miles Johns with that knockout. Moving on up the card, Ricardo Ramos taking on Julian Erosa. Another knockout, I think, that is waiting to happen. I think Julian Erosa is actually the much better fighter, and having a win over somebody like Hakeem Dawodu is actually ridiculous. But he also has close fights with people that he shouldn't have close fights with, and he's been chinned really recently. So I'm going to be siding with Ricardo Ramos, the younger, fresher, honestly more aggressive featherweight. Moving on up the card, Trey Ogden taking on Kurt Holobaugh. I'm going to be going with Kurt Holobaugh just because Trey Ogden... Trey Ogden sucks. Oh God, Trey Ogden sucks. I've watched him get pieced up by too many people. I was going to hesitate there for a second and just not cook this man because they're still fighters at the end of the day. And if I ever ran into him in real life, I'm getting cooked. But you know what? My job here is to say things as I see them. And I really do feel like both of these fighters don't show me too much in terms of like technical skill. But Kurt Holobaugh, again, has that dog in him. He just won the Ultimate Fighter to get himself back into the UFC, and I was really impressed with that. He broke my parlay, which pissed me off, but it stood out how clean he transitioned into that what was that, like inverse triangle or whatever he got. It was just nice, and I feel like if he can do shit like that, he has more ways to win the fight. I've never seen Trey Ogden pull off anything cool like that, so I'm gonna be going with Kurt Holobaugh. Moving on up the card, Luis Pajuelo taking on Fernando Padilla. This one's a little bit difficult for me. I'm gonna be going with Luis Pajuelo in his UFC debut. Just because he kind of reminds me of Ilia Topuria, and it's something about his build and how he throws punches, or I guess maybe not how he throws punches, but how he stays in the pocket. I like that. He seems like a dangerous fighter that's not really scared to get knocked out. Fernando Padilla, kind of the same, but I feel like his frame and his build is what makes me not want to pick him. He did prove me wrong his last time out in his UFC debut, so maybe I should hop on the bandwagon. And he's also a Mexican fighter, so you know he's gonna have that chin, that crazy Mexican chin, and that heart. But I'm still gonna be siding with Luis Pajuelo. I think he's gonna be able to find his shots. I think they're gonna both be trading like crazy, and maybe both are gonna like drop each other. I could see this fight being potentially the fight of the night, but I think Pajuelo is gonna be a little bit more, what's the word? I think he's gonna be more conditioned to take the damage, and that's surprising when you're talking about a Mexican fighter. But yeah, I'm going to be siding with Luis Pajuelo, getting it done by a knockout, because I don't think they're going to be able to last. Somebody has to get knocked out. Moving on up the card, Billy Quarantillo taking on Youssef Zalal. Great fight. I'm going to be siding with Billy Quarantillo. Although he has gotten chinned recently, Billy's always been one of those fighters to me that I feel like he's at least top 10 caliber. And if he really got his diet and nutrition and strength and conditioning together, and he started really going into fights with a clear-cut game plan, he could be one of the best fighters in the world. He just has that type of like movement, and I don't know, like I guess fight IQ. He reminds me of Corey Sandhagen in a lot of ways. That's what I saw in Corey going up prior to when Corey was the like top contender that he has been now. I saw the same things in him. I think Corey executed better on the things that I'm talking about Billy needs to execute. Youssef Zalal is a solid opponent. he has a lot of win. I feel like he came into the UFC like damn near undefeated or something, if I'm not wrong. Let me just double check. Because I remember when he came in a long time ago, his record was not this whack. No, I'm tripping, because he lost to Chepe and Matt Jones prior to being in the UFC. No, yeah, he had a 9-2 record, or a 10-2 record. And then he lost to Ilya, but that was a decision. I remember that fight. Yeah. Wow, that's wild. And then he leaves the UFC, goes on a bit of a win streak, and now he's back. I didn't even realize that he left. Okay. But his last losses were Sean Woodson, Sungwoo Choi. Yeah, no, I'm going to be siding with Billy Quarantillo. I do think this could be a bit of a riskier fight for Billy if he gets caught. Youssef throws weird shots from weird angles, and he has good footwork, decent grappling, but I think Billy has way better gas tank, and he's going to be able to just put a pace on Youssef and maybe melt him with like a 3rd round TKO or just a late decision. Hard to say. I'm gonna side with a 3rd round TKO for Billy Quarantillo just to make this interesting. And then moving on further into the main card, Peyton Talbot taking on Cameron Simon. I'm siding with the underdog here. I'm going with Cameron Simon. I think that Peyton is going to be way sharper on the feet in the first round, and he's going to be landing solid shots, but I think Cameron's tough, and he knows that he's going to be in for a rough first round, getting his legs chewed up a bit. I think he's going to be able to work with it, stay at enough in the fight to not get 10-8'd, and enough to, like, you know, not get dropped and then finish or something. He might get dropped, but I think he's going to stay in it the whole time, keep it pretty close, and then in the 2nd and 3rd round, he's just going to, like, start to slowly steal away. I think we're seeing that a lot lately, that people get pushed in the UFC early with these nice, you know, perfect records, a lot of early stoppages, and they come in and they look good maybe in their debut or their first 2, and then you see them up against a higher caliber opponent and they can't last. I'm going to trust Cameron Simon to send Peyton Talbot back to the drawing board to at least figure out how to, like, really amplify his game, because he honestly is one of the most exciting prospects that I've seen in a minute. Bantamweight just constantly looks better and better as the years go on. I could see a world where Peyton gets this done early, or, you know, they're slugging it out and Peyton is the one that finds the better shots, but I'm going to trust Cameron Simon to, honestly, I'm going with another finish. I think it's going to be kind of similar to last weekend with Isaac Dolgarian and Christian Quinones, except I think Cameron's going to be able to find the finish on a tiring Peyton who's starting to fade out of the fight. And then we have Edmund Shabazian taking on AJ Dobson. This is risky, man. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm going to be siding with Edmund Shabazian. I think at this point in his career, he's just been through so much, and he's trained with so many killers as of late, and the fact that he's still in it and he still wants it like that, I respect it so much, because I thought after his first couple of really bad losses, he wasn't going to be in it the same way. Because remember, way back, he was the undefeated prospect that was seen as like the golden boy, and he was going to be pushed up. But then he took those bad losses, and he just really fell out of the mainstream audience. I'm glad the UFC is still giving him, you know, 3rd down on the main card. They're still giving him that spotlight. They still see something in him. I do too. I think this is a good matchup against AJ Dobson. Somebody that's going to be bringing it to him on the feet in the first round, and probably even maybe going for takedowns and whatnot. He's a well-rounded mixed martial artist in and of himself. Man, I'm starting to feel my allergies hitting, bruh. But we move on. We truck on. But I think Edmund Shabazian overall is just more talented on the feet, especially. He really does look solid all the time. If he can put together a win streak, and honestly, fuck the win streak for a second. If he can find a way to improve his gas tank and improve maybe his heart a little bit. I mean, you can't really do that, actually. See, I'm scrambling for you, Edmund. I'm scrambling right now. My brain is trying to figure out ways to, like, rationalize why you win. Sometimes you just you have a feeling and you gotta go with it. So I'm gonna side with Edmund Shabazian because I have a feeling. Don't let me down, brother. I could see a world where you get finished. I could see a world where you do the finishing. Let's hope it's that world right now. Then we have Carl Williams taking on Justin Tafa. Man, I'm starting to get out of it right now, bro. These allergies. I'm siding with Carl Williams because I see that plus money on Justin, and it's making me lick my lips. Like, I want it to happen so bad, but honestly, I can't trust it after what I saw happen last weekend. And we know, I mean, not last weekend, but a couple weekends ago with his brother, and we know that both of them were doing that, like, short notice swap because Justin originally had to pull out of his fight. I don't think that he's going to be that conditioned. I think Carl Williams is going to land one takedown. Justin might be able to get up from it, and I don't even know if I trust that. Like, I might prop the under, 2 takedowns on Prize Picks, or 1.5 takedowns, And I think after he gets him down, it's just going to be a wrap. Maybe even he can just kick his leg out. If you see what happened to his brother a couple weekends ago, you know that they're not going to be that conditioned for it. I don't know how long Carl Williams wants to stay on the feet, though, so I think I do trust Carl to go for the takedowns really early like he does in every other fight and avoid that risk and just win a boring unanimous decision, or, you know, prop up and start landing the heavy ground and pound, because you could. Then we have the main event, Amanda Ribas taking on Rose Namajunas. Rose is personally one of my favorite fighters of all time. It's unfortunate to see the skid she's been on ever since that really, honestly, worst fight I've ever seen in my life. That happened with her and, what is her name? The only girl that's beaten her like twice now. I'm forgetting her name. The Cookie Monster. Carla Esparza. Horrible fight. And then ever since then, she's just looked like not the same. And she's been pulling out of fights, I believe. Hasn't fought in a fat minute. The last time she did, it was up against Manon Fiorot, and I trusted her, and she couldn't get that done. Although I do think it's different taking on somebody like Amanda Ribas. I think Amanda is going to be having her chin wide up in the air, and I think that's horrible against somebody like Rose, who's notorious for finding just sniper-like shots. I mean, you can't forget the fact that she's 2-0 on one of the freakiest athletes, man or woman, just freakiest athletes on the planet in Zhang Weili, and she's 2-0 on that girl. And one of them was a flash KO, which is just ridiculous. Just ridiculous. I'm going to be siding with Rose Namajunas, obviously. I think she's going to get it done with like a third-round stoppage, actually. I think Amanda's going to be bringing it to her, and I think she's going to be surprised that on the ground, Rose might even just be better in the jiu-jitsu world, honestly. Like, if Rose really did show up, you know, conditioned and mentally here, like she seems like she is from her interviews, a switch on Rose is a dangerous fighter. Her 11-6 record is extremely, what's the word? It's detracting. What's the right word I'm thinking about here, bro? I'm sorry. I feel sick today. I cannot think at all. I'm fumbling over my words. There's a word for what I think Rose is, and that record is deceiving. Oh my God. I'm going to bed.